Hello everyone, you have spoken loud and clear. So today we're checking Heolstor's theme from Elden Ring Nightreign. I'm a little concerned because I might be all out of words to explain how beautiful this soundtrack is to me. But since I'm all out of words, I might as well go to the Heolstor and get me some more. Heyo! Or should I say, Heolstor? And if you cringed at that, you are 100% contractually obligated to hit the bell. These jokes aren't gonna get better. As per your recommendation, I'm going to try to do things a little bit differently this time. Before breaking down each phase, I'm going to listen to it in its entirety, so you guys have an easier time following, and you also get the immediate, full-on, uninterrupted reaction. After a full uninterrupted reaction to the phase, then we'll be back to our pedantic breakdown. So without further ado, let's begin! Again, that beginning with the sound design. Oh, that thumping sound. Oh, okay. And now it's flowing. And the piano in the back. Pa-da-da. That's the motif from the opening. We got variation on the beginning. This has so many ideas from the main motif, but it's not it. Oh, with the thumping at the bottom. With the solo violin. And now the group. Oh, what a beautiful moment. Dance of death. That rhythmic pattern at the end, creating this development of uncertainty about where the strong beats fall, really destabilizes everything. I love it. This holds so many cool ideas in it. I can't wait to break it down. So, why wait? Let's have a closer look. The theme of Heolstor definitely has a lot to do with the theme we've heard from the main menu. But mind you, unlike the fight with Radagon, which shows pretty much the same theme verbatim, minus the harp part representing Marika's theme, here we start by alluding to the theme that we've heard before. It is not identical. Now this could mean multiple things, and I'll be a bit more comfortable trying to theorize what it represents after we hear all of the phases, but for now, we're starting with sound design once again, setting the stage before the music coming in. It sounds like wind blowing, like ghosts whispering. It's a very powerful imagery coming together with the empty, desolate land at the third night, the unbelievable destruction that the night has wrought. Then we have a very restrained opening, just 2 notes. And instead of moving forward with this theme, it really halts it. And all we hear is this thumping, this knocking. Now, this knocking sound really sounds a lot like a heartbeat, which would definitely put you on edge because it stops the music outright. Instead of showing us the entire melody, it shows us a touch of it, and then the knocking. Part of what makes it unusual is that, unlike a heartbeat, which has 2 pulses, this heartbeat has 3. So first of all, it's very unsettling because to us, we know what a heartbeat sounds like. And they play it multiple times for us to notice that this is an abnormal heartbeat. Musically, it also sets the pace for the upcoming waltz, the dance of night and death. And that dance permeates throughout Elden Ring Nightreign. It is really so very dominant. Not only in the main theme, not only for Heolstor, but for many other bosses. That connection that the knight has to dance, to death, we are definitely going to explore that more when we talk about the lore. But for now, let's continue. Now we have a pattern of the melody being fragmented. So each little part of the melody is being expanded, elongated by that knocking. It really feels like Heolstor is trying to break those seals that cover him. And in this phase, he is very much restrained. This was possibly done by the progenitors of the Nightfarers, their ancestors. Because you can see this script on these seals, it's kind of similar to the script that the recluse has on her spells. So the melody being fragmented by that heartbeat really feels like we don't see Heolstor yet. We don't see the Nightlord yet. We're seeing it trying to break out of its seals, which he's definitely gonna do during the fight. That is such a beautiful example of restraint in musical composition because this is your final boss, and it begins with an understatement. A disheveled knight walking through a desolate desert, slowly lumbering towards you. And all the music gives you to take that moment in is a bated breath. This entire beginning for the music is a promise that's waiting to be kept. Not only from the ancestors to the Nightfarers, but from the listeners of the main menu theme to the people who made it through to the last boss of the game. Fantastic work. Let's continue. Now we can hear the theme is flowing a lot faster. There's a lot more movement here. This circular motion really brings out the inevitability of that dance of night. No matter how many times I have to do this, I will never stop. I am inevitable. That is what that circular motion evokes for me, at least. And it's accompanied so well in that context of the waltz. As a dance, the dance doesn't stop. It keeps moving, it keeps flowing, it doesn't have a natural end. This is a natural disaster that has abnormal consequences. Here we have a beautiful development, because unlike before, now the melody isn't halted. It's no longer being held back. The seal is weakening. The fact that this isn't tied to some, let's say, point in his health bar, but really something that happens straight out in the music, it really shows how the night was only a matter of time. The cutting gifted tribe knew that. They knew that there is nothing they could do to stop it, only to prepare for it. And the shattering essentially drew forth in time that event, that calamity. Such subtle musical messaging, but it is amazing. And just like that, not even at the beginning of a new phrase, just in the middle, that little piano kind of extracting the sympathy out of you once again, as it did with Gwyn, as that movement of plucking did with Marika's theme. So even if you haven't read Heolstor's story yet, which you won't the first time you fight him, the game still places him in the role of a tragic figure. But this game has a lot more tragedy than that. It has tragedy galore. This is just the icing on the cake, really. Also, that line that the piano begins with, let's hear it again. It goes like this. Very, very interesting. Let's keep following that piano line. This line is so tragic, so sad. It really is holding so much grief within it. And it's extremely warranted lore-wise. I think that it is maybe the most prominent feature that we have seen up until now in the main theme and in Heolstor's theme. Okay, so after we had... It's a little challenging to hear because it goes lower in the register of the piano, which makes it a bit more covered by the strings. But the next portion of the melody is... which is from the main theme. Ta-dee-da-da-da, ta-dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da. Even if we don't notice it consciously, it is building that connection in our brain. It makes us reminisce about everything we went through, because every time we opened that game, the motif was there. That little portion of the melody. While we're at it, I should clarify what I mean when I say motif, leitmotif, and theme. Motif is the smallest form of a musical idea that stands on its own. It's not a huge idea, it's a small Lego brick, #non-sponsored, through which you slowly build your music and develop it. It's not just the addition of another new idea and another new idea, it is the constant development, maintaining, and the nurturing of motifs that makes us feel something, that brings the repetition into the yin and yang of repetition and variation. Now, a leitmotif, or as some pronounce, leitmotif, is an idea originating from the world of the opera, in which a musical idea, be it melodic, rhythmic, or harmonic, be connected to a character, a place, or a concept in the story. It really helps create a sense of meaning, of emotional connection between the viewer or the player and the character. So sometimes it would appear as its original form, but then, if something happens to the character, it changes, it evolves. Something bad happened to them in the story that is a turning point. Then as composers, we can take that little leitmotif, which is a leading motif, and we change it. And that change in something familiar is giving you that sense of, ooh, something moved. That is why we develop existing motifs instead of just making new ones. Why won't you just make a sad motif for the sad moment and a happy motif for the happy moment? That's because we have a much stronger emotional connection to changes in the familiar. And it all goes back to what we talked about in the Libra video when we talked about pattern recognition and noticing changes in an existing pattern. In essence, a change in an existing pattern draws your attention, and we want to do that when we want to make you feel something. So yeah, Absolutely great usage of that. Now, when I say theme, I usually mean an entire piece of music that is usually representative of a character or a place or a concept, while a theme is usually larger than a leitmotif. It very much often contains it. So when I say theme, think about a larger concept, a larger structure, comprised of the leitmotif and developments on it. When I play it again now, try to listen where the piano goes, and you'll see that when it goes to that lower register, it actually has that melody in it. Da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da-dee, and it really plays on that motif. It develops it in a way, in a form that we haven't seen before. In the main menu theme, it was the end of the phrase. It was the end of the story. But now, da-dee-da, da-dee-da, it's a repetition with a small variation. A sequence, moving the same melodic piece down the scale. Pa-dee-da, pa-dee-da. The harp that used to symbolize America in the original game, now it's back with that accompanying role we've heard in the main menu theme, though the music is different. Same function, same arrangement, different music, because we're not yet facing the Night or Heolstor at their fullest form. Still sealed, still contained. Does that imply that America had something to do with its previous sealing? Possibly. Let's continue. There is a beautiful air of hesitation. This hesitation is created by two musical elements. One is the pauses that we have after two notes, like ta-da, ti-da. That pausing really gives you room for air, for suspense. And then we have the other element, and that all is combined with another element, which is the high violins playing tremolo. Tremolo is when the violinist is playing very, very quickly back and forth with the bow, creating a it creates that unstable sound, something that is very fragile, very nervous, something that is on the brink of breaking. It's so simple, but it's extremely elegant. It's so on point with this boss. Sometimes the little things are the most impactful when it comes to characterizing a boss. I love it. You can really hear that fragile texture on top. Listen to it. And the bell in the background. That sense of fate knocking on your door. The tubular bells are very powerful instruments to use when you want to have dramatic emphasis, but they are far away. Using such a dramatic color, but putting it farther away from you, using it very subtly, that really creates that kind of worry of what is about to come, rather than fear and awe of the thing that already arrived. The strings are taking the waltz. It's moving a lot faster than before, not tempo, but information-wise. Drama. Now we've heard all of the strings doing that tremolo thing. This is what it sounds like when all of them are doing that nervous back and forth with the bow. Listen to it again. So now we're asking ourselves, are we out of the waltz? Are we out of that counting of three of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? Is that the case? Or is it something else? And since it's not conclusive, yeah, it will be one of these things that throws the players off, adding just a smidge of difficulty. Not only that, but the heartbeat now goes in twos, not in threes. But don't let it fool you, we are still in 3/4, the waltz continues. That heartbeat is just accenting everything but the strong beat. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the heartbeat is doing 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, really creating a sense of resistance. Resistance to the powers that be, to what's supposed to be controlling, what's supposed to be the center. It really aligns with the resistance to the Earth Tree, to the lands between, and to everything they represent. Beautiful musical storytelling. I also recognize some shenanigans when it comes to the counting of the music. Let's look closer. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A lot of the times when we're arranging, we're placing the lower notes that are very impactful on the strong beat. So most likely, your brain is going to interpret the place in which the heartbeat falls as the first beat, but it's actually the second. If your ear followed the heartbeat as its center of rhythm, which it most likely does, the next part is going to come in seemingly out of nowhere, out of beat, out of sync. Something is going to feel off about it. So it's a very clever way of cheating your listeners into thinking something had happened, something changed, while it's all just a sleight of hand. It's shrouding the beat, it's hiding it. And considering the fact that Heolstor as a word either means darkness or hiding place, it's very appropriate. I really think this might be one of my favorite moments in this track. There is this peak that the melody gets to, and it lingers on it with such a sense of grief, of longing for something that is gone. Let's break down how they made that moment happen. We begin with the violins playing the same melodic line. Everybody's on the same melody, and then we have a split into the harmony. When these things happen in an unexpected moment, it really brings out a lot of emotion from the listener. And the harmony that's created when the paths diverge, it's just so beautiful. There's something so sorrowful about it. I can't help but to be amazed by this duality of sorrow and beauty. And so many of these tracks are just filled with it. It's amazing. Our composition begins to inhabit more bass in it. It keeps expanding its range and its dynamic. Now, dynamics are really much more than volume. When we say piano or forte, pianissimo, fortissimo, we mean how brazen or how reticent our music currently is, how it is performed. And it has a huge amount of character, the way that the musicians interpret the notes that are written. So it's far more than volume, and it's used here fantastically. Now, between the moments where the melody is prominent, we have those little runs in the strings. This rhythmic texture that is writhing within. Pay attention. It feels without rest. It feels like every moment that's passing, the night is getting closer. Heolstor is closer to breaking the seal. This level of restraint, of patience, is phenomenal because holding a sense of tension and managing it for a long time is pretty hard to do. Any level of tension that you present is going to be negated the more your player hears it. So holding your cards closer to your chest as a composer is so critical because it's artistic resource management. To make it through the track without losing that sense of tension, of growth, without it becoming obsolete to the player, that requires patience. It requires a very smart usage of your resources. This soundtrack, it is a music school onto its own. Beautiful stuff. Here we have another usage of the motif from the main theme. Ta-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da. All of these little echoes, they help to build up to that moment in which the theme will come back for real. The theme would come back in its full glory. And that aesthetic of a solo string instrument being powered up by a section of violins that are an octave above it, it's so very emblematic of what Heolstor represents. Heolstor is at this point an amalgamation of forces and echoes and destruction. Yes, it's his shell that the knight walks in, but he's only the vessel through which the larger forces, perhaps the god of night, is acting through. And the fact that those higher violins are kind of singing in a choir above it, walking with it wherever he goes. It's kind of the musical version of the visual idea in which the deathbirds have the different spirits showing from their wings, the warriors that they picked up from battle. Perhaps it's also representative of the people that Heolstor lost, because his loss became what he is. Not who he is, what he is. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Here we have a serious rhythmic escalation, as the violin is taking over, playing a very slow melody. The violas and maybe the second violins are creating this texture that is throwing off the rhythm once again. Let's try to focus not on the high violin, but on that rhythmic movement happening beneath it. So while we're still within the waltz, what we're getting here in the strings is a huge destabilizing force, a melodic pattern that's moving in units of 7, or more specifically, 2, 2, 3. So all of the notes within this pattern are the same length, but the groupings of them are not symmetrical. So if you follow that pattern, it seems like everything is moving in units of 7. So ta, tu, ta, tu, ta, ta, ta. This is a pattern that's not going to be easy for your ear to get used to, especially because the main melody doesn't work with that rule. It does not work with a division of 7. So all of the time, your ear is like, should I look at the melody? Should I look at this weird thing? What should I be looking at? As the unrest within the shell that is Heolstor goes out of control. Excellent usage of rhythm. Excellent. That's the first phase. Tragic, ominous, inevitable. A powder keg about to explode. I feel like this would be a good time to take a closer look at our boy Heolstor and see what he has in store. Ah, you thought you were safe from bad jokes because the opening is over. No, sweet summer child, I never stop. At least you guys just have to deal with me in the video. I need to live with me every day. So I think it would be wise to begin with the item description for the Night of the Lord. The knight belonging to Heolstor, left upon its defeat. The powers of its namesake can be unlocked by performing a relic rite. The country lay in ruin. The man who once was knight had challenged the hero, but he too was no match. He fell, just another body in a great pile. But eventually he awoke, crawling out from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, he yet lived. And so he cursed the world. It was the dead of night, and from the sky poured down a great rain. This item description holds most of the direct storytelling we have about Heolstor. So let's try to break it down piece by piece, and then we'll see how we can connect it to the music beyond what we've done so far. The country lay in ruin. The man who was once knight had challenged the hero. Just like we mentioned in the previous video about Libra, we have titles and monikers. This is another example of the prominence of the persona in the storytelling. It doesn't matter which country, the country. It doesn't matter which man, the man. It doesn't matter which knight, the knight. Now, I think it's important to note that it's written the man who once was knight, possibly at the time in which that thing happened to him, that fateful night, he wasn't a knight. He left. He abandoned his post, or maybe he quit beforehand. Maybe he was injured, but it sure seems like he wasn't a knight in that particular moment. Otherwise, it would just be said the knight had challenged the hero. Now, the hero is also not personally identified, but clearly, like many others, Heolstor was no match for him, and so he fell. Just another body in a great pile. There's a very strong element here of detaching the person from the persona. He's just another body in a great pile. The fact that they say he fell, just another body, I think might mean that he died there. And so the text continues, but eventually he awoke. How? At what point? How long did it take? Not sure. Crawling out from underneath the others, beyond the fact that it would be extremely gory, an experience that could rattle even the soul of an experienced knight. This would naturally bring with it a lot of guilt, not only survivor's guilt, but guilt for the fact that he was not strong enough to protect anything or anyone. That's so harsh. That is so tragic. That's a part of the reason why I think the next few words are important. He yet lived. This could definitely allude to the guilt that he's feeling. Everybody died, yet he lived. But it really reminds me of how the opening scene for Elden Ring speaks about the tarnished. The narrator says, "Now rise, you tarnished, you dead who yet live." I don't feel like this specific phrasing is coincidental. It's true that they like playing with their old English and stuff. It's true, but this feels pointed. This scene has a hole filled to the brim with bodies. And the narrator says, "The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all." I think Heolstor may have been a tarnished. Now again, I'm not proposing any specific theory, but I am exploring what the music gives me. I think a part of the reason why the music provides sympathy for Heolstor, regardless of the fact that he has no personality prior to the cataclysm that we're aware of. It's not like he was presented to us as a character that something terrible happened to. I think it might try to create some empathy, some parallel, and it's definitely a very interesting concept. For example, the reason the Tarnished can get back to the lands between after they've been essentially exiled is because of the guidance of grace, the call of long-lost grace. Perhaps something about Heolstor being a Tarnished allows him to come back to the lands between. That's why it was only a matter of time. It also aligns with the idea that there is an outer god of night. Something that was repressed, that was pushed out of the Golden Order, and that god of night is using Heolstor. He's using his ability to travel back to the lands between after the shattering. So that's one thought about it. This could potentially connect to an idea presented in this video by YouTuber Smotown about the possible identities or symbolism of the hero and the knight. I'm definitely recommending watching that video and any video I reference throughout this lore rambling of mine. So within that idea, Smotown present the possibility that the hero is referring to Godfrey, when the knight is representing a nameless knight from Castle Morn. Since the Sword of Castle Morn is a revenger's weapon, it is burdened with oceans of anger and regret, which would definitely align with our current revenger, Heolstor. A lone surviving champion from a country now vanished was so determined to continue fighting that he claimed the swords of an entire clan of warriors. So how do these pieces fit together? Let's say that the Tarnished didn't all go willingly. What if, to go to that land afar, they had to die? Clearly in the opening cinematic we see the bodies of the Tarnished. So they kept them. Maybe they didn't go willingly to those lands afar. Godfrey led them, but maybe some of them he took by force. If America knew that there will be a necessity for the Tarnished, it could be seen as an act of evil done for the greater good. Because as we can see in the game, without a Tarnished, that war doesn't really come to an end, and a new age is really nowhere to be found. So if Heolstor has memories of Castle Morn falling to the hands of Godfrey, it is possible that he would also hold a personal grudge against the Erdtree and against the Greater Will. But everything I added is more of a thought and option exploration of the idea that Heolstor might have been a Tarnished, more than a bona fide theory. I will leave the exploration of that thought farther in the capable hands of the lore tuber community. As mentioned before in a previous video, the Japanese name of Heolstor is more directly translated to nameless, which very much supports the pattern we've discussed when it comes to the emphasis this game has on the persona rather than the shadow or the self. The Nightlord is, by all means, the loss of self. His design is an empty shell, inhabited by shadow, showing what happens when the persona and the ego crumble and the shadow grabs hold of the self completely. He's an empty vessel for ideas to move through, especially, potentially, the God of Night. As a foil to that, we have the Nightfarers. Each of them in their own way has to defragment their self. They have to make peace with who they were in the past, and they have to make peace with their unfinished business, the things they will have to let go of if they are to defeat the Night. The recluse would have to make peace with her mistreatment of her artificial baby. The fact that potentially a lack of love has made him ravenous, so he consumes not only darkness, but everything. That's why within the arc that her character goes on, she learns to be a maternal figure for the other Nightfarers. She provides them with kindness, with listening, with advice, and that's just one example of a fragmented self needing to be pulled back together. Until that happens, I think it's implied that the Nightfarers are shells left by their ancestors, and within these vessels, the souls of their descendants are stored. It's an empty persona they embody, with a self that needs to be reclaimed. Heolstor has no self to reclaim. He became a vessel of grief, of sorrow, and a tool for unbelievable destruction. Now there are two options here. Either the Night existed before Heolstor, in which case the God of Night saw an opportunity and took over him, much like the Formless Mother contacted Mohg, be it in a more aggressive manner because the Formless Mother did not remove Mohg's soul. On the other hand, we have the Nox connection. In Elden Ring, we were told that the Nox are waiting eternally for their age. They are waiting for a Lord of Night. And indeed, Heolstor is carrying what seems to be a Moonlight Greatsword, which could imply that he was given it by a Carian princess. But I digress. The idea I wanted to put on the table is, what if the Cutting Gifted tribe and the Nox are both split cultures from the shamans? Tribes that descended from the original shamans, each having their own agendas and their own idea of what the world should look like. It's interesting to see a case in which the Lord is a vessel of a great rune, and his shell is obviously made of silver, which is possibly why the silver tier allows Wilder to take the Nightlord's place. All of that to say that the music represents the inevitability of Night, the tragedy of circumstance for both the Nightfarers and Heolstor, and the constant building of sins upon sins upon sins for which the children of the sinners must be punished. But let's put a pin in my rambling for a little bit and continue to phase 2. Once you took down Heolstor's health bar, massive amounts of darkness will seep out of him. His seals would break and he will cover the entire arena in black abyss. As the darkness fades, we see a completely different skybox, definitely evocative of that vision of the Nox for a Lord of Night. This phase is a transitionary piece, unlike the soundtrack for the other Nightlords, in which the third phase is a part of an event or an update. Heolstor's 3 phases are all present in the game. As before, I listen to the whole thing, then we'll break it down. Such beautiful female vocals. Ooh, and the Bell of Fate. And the theme. The signature is all over the place. That motif. Back where we started. And it echoes into the void. It's so precise. Let's jump in and understand it better. We begin with a much more intimate version of our choir. Fewer singers, mostly female, and we have this somber crying grief, either for Heolstor himself or for what he lost. This also takes multiple meanings depending on which Nightfarer you're playing as. The story of Wilder has a very strong emphasis on inevitability. He wants to save Duchess. He wants to save the priestess. Depending on what you do in the game, he could also try and take Heolstor's place in an act of self-sacrifice, since he knows he's not making it back. He's too hurt outside of the Round Table Hold, and he could try to sacrifice himself for the chance of his sister going free. All of this has a very strong air of tragedy and inevitability. And even after he does it, we don't really know if he saved her. He will never know, and there will be no he to know anymore, because he let go of who he is. He uprooted his self to take the place of the Nightlord. So yeah, the soundtrack has different meanings depending on what is the storyline you're currently on. What is the branch of storytelling you're currently exploring? This could either be a piece full of grief for a person who's about to sacrifice themselves, or a piece of music representing the grief of a man who lost everything and was completely incapable of doing anything about it. Again, each Nightfarer has their own score to settle. Much like YouTuber Silent Ellipsis have said, everything that happens in Nightreign acts as a sort of purgatory for the Nightfarers. They will have to resolve the different things that put them in this purgatory, and that's why the soundtrack does such a good job as a final piece of the game because it is loaded with tragedy and inevitability in a way that applies not only to the boss you're fighting, but to the character you're playing. Now, I can't give all of the credit to the soundtrack, the writing is definitely intentional here, but the soundtrack capitalizes quite well. Let's continue. The bell, the toll of fate. Much more prominent now. And the theme, is a combination of the two motifs we've had in the main theme. First we have without the descent, right? And then we have, this really shows the different pieces coming together. Everything that Heolstor is going to be. Whether it's the cataclysm that the cutting-gifted tribe have foreseen, or the prophecy of the Nox and the Lord of Night they waited for. No matter how you slice it, this is the different musical pieces coming together. The stars are slowly aligning, and we are getting closer to that more brazen representation of the theme. It's slowly getting clarified, unveiled, and our brain is just eating up those little pieces of familiarity. That's a nasty move. So up until now, our wily composer have deceived the listener to think that maybe the rhythm has changed, when in fact what we had is like a sleight of hand, hiding the strong beat, or one layer that has asymmetrical divisions within its part. But now the real fight begins, and the soundtrack has to step it up. What we have here is a portion of the music that is not in 3/4, not in 4/4, in 5/4. That is an asymmetrical meter straight out, since our ears are used to hearing 3/4, 4/4, partially because the soundtrack has established that as the baseline. When something like this happens, it will feel unusual. A parallel to that is based on game mechanics is whatever happens when you have a delayed attack, an attack that has an extra long wind-up. So you can't really count on what you think the rhythm is gonna be. Here, the bar is prolonged, so when you're listening to it, you have to think about it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another thing before the cycle begins again. It's an attack that's slightly longer, and that is definitely effective at messing up your rhythm. And then they change it. They use the pattern from before to skip the strong beat. Bang, bang. And they use that to get back to 3/4. The waltz continues. The waltz of death and resistance, based on what we've seen so far, which is very, very cool. I don't know why, but it really reminds me of Caligo's theme. I wonder if they're hiding like little pieces of all of the Nightlords within this soundtrack, like within this piece, as like the Nightlords are different aspects of Heolstor. Possible. I didn't do a deep dive into all of them, so it's kind of hard to tell, but definitely a possibility, which makes sense considering the fact that he later opens the arena in the third phase. He's opening the skybox and he's looking through a giant eye into the different arenas of the different bosses. Here's another beautiful use of the theme. Beautiful, absolutely great. Pam ba da dum. That constant emphasis on the second beat, that unrelenting resistance. It's like, I will not be contained, I will not be controlled. The idea of an outer god raging as they're fighting against their own exclusion from the greater order. We've seen that before. We've seen in the DLC that the rot, for example, was a normal element of the world. It only became baleful after it was pushed away, after it was rejected. It became baleful. It started uh, acting out. This type of rejection, creating malice. These things are very much a sin of the Earth Tree. The idea of trying to create order by removing things from existence that are natural forces, defying the order of the world, much like we've seen in Dark Souls, for example, with Gwyn trying to contain the dark, push the dark away. If I only put it in a little box, if I only weaken it enough, order can be sustained. Which is why I think the Western aesthetic in From Software games is very pointed and important to the way that the narrative works. In Western culture, it's much more common to see light and dark as a zero-sum game. One of them has to defeat the other for order to reign. But in more Eastern cultures, you have the ideas of the yin and the yang, of the fact that these opposites are bound to be united, the balance between which is the thing to strive for. So the fact that something that was contained or pushed away would fight its way back, because all things yearn eternally to converge. That's some turtle wisdom. Maybe they should have listened to Muriel. Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows? This melodic gesture of da dee da da da, it keeps like jumping up and going back to its root, like to the home of the scale. That is the persistence of the night, its unending urge to consume, to destroy, and it truly destroys everything. It really makes you think of that thing Melina said about how these lands need death indiscriminate. And what would that mean? Potentially, it could place the Glowmite Queen somewhere within the periphery of the narrative for this game. Between the Dragonkin soldiers and Noclatio and the Godskin nobles being very prominent parts of the game, I'm thinking, yeah, she might be more connected to this that appears on the surface, which is the thing they do with her. The Glowmite Queen is this consistent character that is mostly absent, and her absence is what we have to go by. She really is the new Velka, although we are getting more breadcrumbs than we did for Velka for Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. Okay, let's continue with Phase 2. You see that the appearance of the motifs from the opening become more and more frequent. The fact that they're showing up faster and faster and faster is building up the expectation for that third phase. That moment in which Heolstor tears the sky open, revealing a huge eye observing one of the different arenas of the different Nightlords. But before we moved on to the third phase, let's talk a little bit about a few inspirations that I think are relevant so we can get to know Heolstor better and maybe things that affected the entire soundtrack. The first thing that comes to mind when I hear that kind of sorrowful music, especially considering the way this theme has been orchestrated, the choice of strings and choir, and the way that they are utilized. In many ways, the connection between night and death and grief made me think of a requiem, a prayer to put the souls of the passing at ease. And I think no musical requiem is as impactful as Mozart's requiem. This piece of music is so loaded with emotion. It sounds so much like a man coming to terms with loss, either of himself or of someone they love. I usually don't claim things with complete certainty, but the closest I will get to that is there is no way that Mozart's Requiem did not play a big part in the inspiration for the soundtrack.
But Daniel,
I hear you say,
a lot of the tracks in From Software games have choir and strings, it's not that particular.
True, but the way that the piece moves, the way it emphasizes chromaticism in very particular points to kind of squeeze out the sadness, the emotion from you. No music student around the world would not be familiar with that highly prominent piece. Mozart's Requiem is almost synonymous with orchestral dramatic writing. We merely have to listen to the opening of the Lacrimosa portion of the Requiem, and I think the similarities will be evident. Notice the gentle strings, the pacing of 3/4 that permeates throughout this soundtrack. Notice the gentle choir that is slowly becoming more and more prominent, beginning with female vocals once again. Now, am I claiming that this track is essentially the Requiem? No, not at all, not remotely. But you can see how prominent that concept of death, of sorrow, of lament was there from day one. They knew what this game is about long before they could know what happens in it. And these themes come out the strongest in the soundtrack. Music is by its nature somewhat abstract. It is not textual per se, at least not most of the time. But in programmatic music, which means music that is bound to accompany a story or a different type of larger piece of art, in there you can definitely see the more abstract narrative ideas, the themes, echoing the loudest, because music is capable of speaking with emotion and intention, saying things that text might have difficulty doing. So that is definitely one connection that I find very interesting. But this is not the only connection of dance and death. There is a medieval concept called dance macabre, a dance of death, a late medieval allegorical concept that represents the universality of death, the fact that death comes for everyone. Once again, that form of inevitability. Many pieces of art were circling around that concept, from paintings all the way to musical pieces like Danse Macabre by Camille Saint-Saëns. And that idea of death coming to you instead of you arriving at death's door, the fact that death as an uncaring agent is there to take you with that dance into that sweet good night. That idea is very much embodied by the rain, by Heolstor, as it's closing in on the lands between. It's closing in on Limveld. I think all of that poses a question of whether night should be pushed away, whether night should be treated as a hostile force, and does it rage only when it's being rejected? Because it is said in the game that night manifests differently depending on whether you embrace it or reject it. So that idea of the dance of death is evocative of one side of it. Embrace it. It is a part of life. It is an inevitability. It is coming for everyone. That equality might be the reason why Libra would choose out of their own volition to kind of follow the rain, to follow the night, as it is by design balanced. It is cosmic balance. And Libra believes, I believe that Libra believes that the way to elevate your consciousness is by finding ultimate balance, even in places of the extreme. I think that concept is very much present, and it's contrasted by another piece of literature, a poem. That poem is called Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night. Let's take a look at it for a second. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage. Rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know that dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Even from this portion, we can see how it explores the idea of accepting the end versus fighting it, raging against it, raging against the dying of the light. The fallen leaves tell a story, and that story is the story that focuses on the end of an age and the cosmic level philosophical war that would dictate where does this world go next? Will it accept that dark is right? Will it go gently into that age of night? Or will it rage? Will it rage against the dying of the light? So while I'm not sure this in particular inspired the creators, I definitely think it's an interesting examination when contrasting with the music, with the game itself, and with the story that it's telling, in combination with Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree, of course. Which brings us without further ado to Phase 3. Let the uninterrupted listening commence. With a little motif and solo violin and the male choir. Or with the brass on the right side. This dark chord. Oh, the emphasis on the two. Ah, they take it away. Keep juggling the motifs. Yeah, let's go! Here we go. Piano is going with that B part from the main theme. Save violin. The resistance on the two. Descending piano line. What's that? I don't know what I just heard. let's start breaking it up. Let's examine it portion by portion. So we have the opening. What we have is a huge cloud that's being achieved by, again, tremolo playing, so back and forth very fast. The double basses and the cello are more prominent here, and that gives this very writhing, gut churning feeling that definitely is more dramatic and more menacing than what we've heard so far. It's an orchestral effect more than it is either a melody or harmony, which is very useful because then it would contrast with the entry of harmony and melody when it comes back. So we have the same thing we've had in the main theme, in the sense that that vocal, that is either a high male vocal or a pitch down female vocal. Because it's a soloist and because it's so filled with reverb, with like the echoing effect of infinite space, it's kind of hard to tell. But this sound will make you feel the main theme is slowly coming back. It's not happening fully yet, but it kind of hints at it. We have a new line, ta da da ta da da, and the entire choir goes in. Pay attention how we're keeping that emphasis on the two. We're keeping that emphasis of I will not acquiesce. I will not be controlled. That's the kind of rebellion that Ronnie had against the fingers, you know? It really brings up the question if Heolstor is the original plan of the Nox to create a Lord of Night. They have said about I think the mimic, if I'm not mistaken, that it's being reborn again and again, and maybe one day it will be reborn a lord. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Let's continue. Now we have a bit of a shift in the emphasis of the rhythm. It becomes like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So they're shifting it a little bit, but the 2 in the bar, the middle of the bar, the most defiant beat to emphasize, that never goes away, which is very, very cool. Also, the melodic parts of the violins, that's hard to play, just putting it out there. It's not easy because it's a very defined melodic line. It's not just running up the scale. It has leaps and contrary motion, amazingly written, beautiful example of counterpoint writing, which is when you have multiple melodies happening at once while they're keeping all of their individuality. So all of them remain fully independent. None of them is being bound to another. They happen at the same time, and they keep happening at the same time. It's very complex writing, usually attributed to Baroque music and 16th century music, Palestrina and Bach. But here we really, really see how dense that makes that line. And whenever the main melody that we're focusing on with the choir, whenever it rests for a second, we finally notice how so very nervous and tense those string lines are. It's beautiful. This is amazing. So they have the motif now played in the violin. And now when they're playing that motif, it's played a lot faster. It's a development of that idea. But instead of being a more spread out development, now it's condensed. Now we have an even more distilled form of Heolstor's theme than we've had in the main menu. That creates such a strong sense of development. It's super effective, and they're doing it by taking away mass from the orchestration. They're taking away that massive number of instruments playing together, so you can notice how this little thing is now much more agile, it's moving much faster, and it is very much out of your control, which I think is a beautiful allegory for death in the game. That's awesome. And that's such a great division, having the violin, solo violin, contrasted with the ensemble of male choir. That contrast between them, it allows both of them to shine in their own way, and their melodies keep happening independently. This is, again, counterpoint. It is a very, very delicate craft, and it is done so well here. Layout. I hope that YouTube keeps at least enough quality so you can hear it. There are lower brass instruments, the trombones, maybe the tuba. You can hear the brass instruments playing a discordant chord, focused more on the right side than the left, I think, but it's very, very dense and it's low. It's creating a massive amount of dissonance. It's very much designed to make you feel in danger, to make you feel like something larger than yourself, something not only physically larger, conceptually larger, is coming for you, and there is nothing you can do about it. When this sound is contrasted with that line of the violin and the male choir, it is conceptually overwhelming. All of these melodies, all of these textures, they're not blending together in a way that makes them unrecognizable. No, they keep their elements as if it is a creature that has different things you can recognize, but you can't really put all of them together within your logic. If any of you have ever read one of the works of H.P. Lovecraft, it really feels to me like this music is describing one of the eldritch, incomprehensible creatures that Lovecraft was writing about. Like, you could tell it has specific elements to it, but putting them together, trying to envision a single entity that had all of these, it would break your mind. Which really, I think, supports the idea that god of night, that blue cosmic mess in the sky, looming over, menacing, absolutely terrorizing anything in its path. Heolstor is long gone. He is the means through which you're fighting the night. Heolstor himself is inconsequential, which is all the more tragic. That loss of self, that loss of caring. We also see it when Wilder is taking Heolstor's place. I think it's written in the remembrance that Wilder, after taking the place of the Nightlord, lumbers on in the sands, keeps walking and walking, indifferent to whether the horses would ride together again, or whether he'll ever meet his sister. But it does make one wonder whether that means he no longer cares whether it actually freed his sister, because he'll never know. Something about becoming the vessel of the night. Maybe it cuts out the self altogether, leaving only the persona and the shadow to control it, since the loss of individuality is so prominent. Also, it's worth noting that from what I was able to learn, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a strong element of social harmony in Japanese culture. And that depiction of becoming an avatar for the greater good, that idea of embodying a concept and forgoing individuality, I think it's really interesting how this story represents it. The Cutting Gifted tribe did sacrifice themselves and all of their possible descendants into this endless fight of the night, just to make for whatever sin they seem to have gleaned. They seem to have learned some sin of the Earth Tree, and for that transgression, treating even young ones like sacrificial twigs, making themselves without a self, a beaconing totem to attract, distract, or cheat a god. My, I love this game. listen to the trombones. Ah. That's such a cool twist. While setting an expectation and just, veering from it, you have that emphasis on the two. Two, ta, ti da 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 da. Instead of like keeping that movement, I'm not gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it twice and I'm gonna do it 3 times. Very, very, very cool. That movement in octaves, simply everyone and everything is singing that descent into the night. Da 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 da. Everybody's doing it. You can feel that weight of the night taking over, that descent into darkness, really taking everyone with it. And they're closing in on Limveld. Limveld, which could be translated into the world between. It functions as the last line of defense against the night. It is, in a way, kind of a sacrificial twig onto its own, because instead of our runes being attracted to that fake little Erdtree that was shaved off the Erdtree, the Nightlord is attracted to Limveld. Now, this fight may have happened a bajillion times. It might, as far as we know, happen in a loop non-stop. That's the punishment of the Nightfarers or of the cutting gifted tribe. So this absolute maniacal cycle, all of its weight, all of its gravity, it's all coming here now. And I absolutely adore it. This is the closest we've come so far to repeating what we've had in the menu theme. Still not the same track, but ideas are really converging now. And what's about to happen is so very cool. I want us to really focus on this. That breath before something starts. And in it, we have a low bass synthesizer. We have a growling sound that is, again, not overtly aggressive. It is filled with aggression in potential. What it sounds like. It sounds bubbling. It sounds like it's waiting to explode. Check it out. And then we have something that is exactly like we remember it from the menu theme. This is episode 12 of the anime. Towards the end of the episode, the intro theme comes in the middle of the final fight. It's going down. That is the moment. And it feels this moment with so much meaning, with so much emotional weight. That type of repetition, this is a promise kept. This is something we were promised at the very beginning in the opening menu. And now the game is keeping that promise. I feel that everything we've been through throughout the game is culminating in this moment. This is, again, such an interesting portion of the theme because ta-da is very much a shadow of ta-ta from the original Elden Ring menu, right? The Radagon's theme. So ta-da. This isn't a full tone, it's a semitone, which is different in its emotional content. It is sadder than Radagon's aggressive, marching theme of war. Very, very appropriate. I think that the solo violin here combined with the choir is really making the most out of the tragedy, out of the sorrowful nature of this fight. And that descending piano line from the theme. There is something here. There is something here. It's some sort of a moan or it feels vocal, but it doesn't feel fully human. Listen to it again. It's definitely present there. I'm not imagining it. It's an unusual sound. I wonder if it's supposed to represent the murmurings of Recluse's artificial baby. It's very, very interesting to include it. It really leaves you thinking. It really does. I am fully expecting this game to show us more. And for the community, of course, to make more and more discoveries over time. And I'm definitely going to explore more Night Lords as we continue. By the way, all of the recommendations for tracks that you put below, I'm keeping all of them in a list so we can get to them in due time. I'll take this opportunity to thank you for your kind words, for your support. It is truly humbling. Don't forget to drink, stretch, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one.